1. First thing to know, I'm completely immune to lidocaine. Yes, this is a thing. Didn't discover this until I was an adult, and it suddenly made sense why I hated dentists so much. Ever since, I've made sure to put this on every dentist intake form, usually under allergies, closest to form usually has. Second, I chipped one of my front teeth when I was a teen. Every once in a while, I have to go in and get it resealed due to wear and tear. I was in college and the tooth needed to be resealed. I decided to try the dentist next to the campus, as they had a good deal with our insurance. Standard I'm a poor college student decisions. I get into my appointment, and an assistant starts prepping me for the procedure. In the chair, pop on the bib, etc. She then takes the tiny needle and pokes me in the gums to freeze me up. Exposed nerves and a broken tooth are painful. As I'm sure you already guessed, she used Novocaine. Not that I knew at first. She'll be assistant for dental assistant, and I'm me. After waiting a few minutes for the shot to work, she starts poking around. I immediately feel sharp pain as she does, and start tensing up. Hold still, I know it feels weird. It hurts. No, that's just the pressure, it's okay. No, it hurts. She takes her fingers and scrapey equipment out of my mouth. I already numbed you, it can't hurt. It does though. Really? She sighs and tells me to look up. While I do, she pokes me in the gums and I jump. Looks like I have to give you another shot. Now at this point, there's been zero numbing effect. I can feel everything. Are you using Novocaine? Actually, it's called lidocaine. Novocaine is a trade name, but yes. I put on my intake form not to use Novocaine, I'm immune to it. You're not immune to lidocaine, no one is. I'll just give you another shot. I am, and it won't work. Please use something else. Any other numbing agent works just fine. It's only Novocaine that doesn't work on me. You don't know what you're talking about. Let me do my job. I sigh and get ready to argue when I remember something. I pay a flat rate, and I have nowhere to be. Cue malicious compliance. Okay. So she gives me another shot. We wait a few minutes. She makes me look at the ceiling and pokes me after a few seconds. I couldn't see her do it, but I could definitely feel it. She gives me another shot and repeats. Doesn't work. Gives me another and another. She gave me 4 shots of Novocaine. And I felt every painful poke and prod. 4 needles in a row, even the small ones they use, not fun. But I was committed. After the 5th shot, my mouth finally started to go numb. Hey, that worked! I guess it just takes a lot. I switched to a different agent for that shot. The dentist was finally called in. And he was pissed. Not only had I wasted at least an hour of their time and pushed back a bunch of appointments, all those extra shots meant they were now taking a loss for my procedure. My payment was far less than they'd had to spend on all that Novocaine. The dentist made her leave the room, did my reseal in about 15 minutes and barely spoke a word. After we were done, I double-checked the amount I was paying, it was fine, and requested a second copy of the cost breakdown and receipts just in case. The receptionist was clearly puzzled at the length of my appointment, and why the dentist and assistant were so grouchy. But I don't think she'd been filled in. Best part, about a month later, they sent me a second bill for all those extra shots. I called them and pointed out their fee policy, was told my bill was a mistake and to ignore it. They then continued to send me a bill for those shots once a month until I moved over a year later. It never showed up on my credit history, and I definitely never went back. As a few people have pointed out, Novocaine is not the same as lidocaine. I was specifically told I have an insensitivity to lidocaine, as well as a higher tolerance to most anesthetics. I woke up in the middle of an arm surgery. Please keep in mind that this is in Canada, not the US. Regulations differ between regions, including who can and cannot administer medication in an official capacity. I know this is low-grade MC compared to a lot of posts, but at the very least I cost this office money in the end for not listening to me and complying with the assistant's request to let me do my job. If nothing else, it's been interesting to learn how many have had similar experiences. I've learned the hard way it's important to be your own advocate in these situations. Even if you end up being wrong about it, having your team double-check is a good thing. We're all human, after all. 2. Years ago, I worked as the sole hourly employee on a team with salaried workers. This designation had been a mistake on my initial contract, and my cool boss said she would switch me to salary just as soon as my first year contract was up. Unfortunately for me, just before my anniversary, my cool boss left, and a bitchy co-worker got promoted. Request denied. No reason given other than, "I don't think it's necessary." A few weeks later, we had this event that had been planned by cool boss, but since she left the company, it fell to new bitchy boss and the rest of us workers to staff it. The location for this event was nearly an hour away from the office. Everyone else could just show up to the location, but being hourly, I had to first go to the office, clock in, then drive an hour. Oh well, guess I get paid for travel time. The night before the event, we had hired a set building team to put everything together, but someone from our company had to stay until they were finished, per contract with the location. Bitchy boss decided to make me stay as I was her least favorite, so the rest of the team left and went home. Well, there were major issues with the set, and by 10 p.m., it was just me and the one set builder left in the place, as he was trying to make this thing work. Set builder didn't care as he was making a ton of overtime, and besides, this particular configuration had been 100% his idea, so he was determined to solve it. I decided I didn't care because I had found some cushions to sleep on. I ended up dozing from about 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. when he finally finished and we could leave. I then drove an hour to the office, clocked out and went home, which was thankfully a short drive. I had an hour to shower, change and go back to the office to clock in, then drive an hour to meet everyone back at the location at 8 a.m. We then worked the event with bitchy boss again, assigning me to stay later than her to supervise breakdown. So, in a 36-hour window, I ended up being on the clock for 33 of those hours. Monday morning, bitchy boss has to approve and submit payroll, and only then does she realize she has to pay me time and a half for those 33 hours. She actually had the gall to be mad at me for not warning her about all the overtime, which made me laugh as I explained, "I didn't think that was necessary, since it was your idea to keep me hourly, boss." For those asking, here is the explanation of why I wanted to be salaried instead of hourly. At this job, salaried workers had a lot more freedom than hourly employees. For example, salary didn't have to clock in and out, so if traffic was bad coming back from lunch, or if they had to leave a little early for a dentist appointment, it was no problem. As an hourly employee, if I was even 1 minute off from my designated hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. with the 60-minute break, I was in trouble. Have to leave early for a dentist appointment? I would have to put in a time-off request and wait for it to be approved before I could take the appointment, and my hours and pay would be docked that week, unless I used vacation time for the time I was gone. It was just very annoying to be the only person in my department who had to jump through so many hoops every day. The aftermath, for those wondering? Nothing major changed for me immediately after that, and I didn't get fired. That many OT hours did raise several red flags for her boss and the accounting department. She got majorly scolded but essentially forgiven as she was a brand new boss. I had already been looking for other jobs, so by the time my contract was ending, I was able to walk out. For those interested, the story of how I left is, less than 6 months later I was sitting in a review, a contract renewal meeting with bitchy boss and her boss. As yet another power move, I had been trying to schedule this meeting for weeks, but bitchy boss decided she was just too busy, and I had to wait until the very last day of my contract. I had been keeping my department afloat, plus assisting with 2 other departments who had people out on various medical leaves, meeting all deadlines while maintaining 0 minutes of OT and 40 hours a week, which impressed the hell out of everyone but bitchy boss. I asked for a small raise and to be made salary with my new contract. Bitchy boss doesn't even blink, immediately denies my raise and my request to switch to salary. So I smile and whip out my letter of resignation stating that I would be leaving at the end of my contract, which was ending that day at 5 p.m. on the dot. And I whipped out an offer letter for my new job with my starting salary of $12,000 more. She looked shocked. Her boss looked a little pale, and I stood up, shook their hands, thanked them profusely for their time, and walked out the door to start packing up my stuff. In the end, I left on excellent terms with everyone but her. Those other departments I was helping, I helped them remotely for a hefty consulting fee until they were restaffed, even after starting my new job. I offered to do the same for my department, but bitchy boss assured her boss that she could get someone in there quickly to fill my shoes. Took 3 months to find someone qualified. They left after 4 months of working under bitchy boss. And then the company closed that position entirely, and bitchy boss had to beg other departments for assistance on a project-by-project basis. Less than 2 years after I left, the revolving door of people due to bitchy boss's mismanagement caused the entire department to shut down. Everyone there at the time was laid off. 3. We work in airline crew scheduling, where our jobs essentially involve ensuring each flight is fully crewed. This requires us to strictly adhere to many rules, including aviation regulations set by the Federal Aviation Administration, and collective bargaining agreements, CBAs, upheld by the pilot and flight attendant unions. However, some of the rules in the CBA can be a little flexible, especially when we can offer pilots additional compensation and they agree to waive certain contractual provisions in exchange. There is a CBA rule for this airline that outlines when and for how long a pilot can be on reserve, a window of time in which they are essentially on call in case we need them to work, and states that if we have an assignment for them, it must start within that window, or it's not contractually legal. However, we would frequently offer pilots additional compensation, usually a full day's worth of pay, if they agree to waive that provision and work trips that start outside of their reserve window. 99% of the time, pilots would accept this additional compensation. Very rarely, in extreme circumstances, we could offer even more pay, sometimes up to 200%, and only if the flight would otherwise be cancelled and cause expensive operational disruptions. I should point out that while most pilots are fantastic to work with, a certain percentage of them are very arrogant and entitled. It's an attitude that frequently occurs in the pilot population. I don't know why. I've worked in the industry for many years, and the same personality tends to appear quite often, more so at the regional airline level, less so in major or legacy airlines. Anyone else who has worked with pilots before can attest to this. The arrogant attitude is especially pronounced towards crew schedulers, though, because we get to be the bad guys and make them go to work. This story concerns a pilot with this attitude and personality who was on reserve. We had a 4-day trip starting in Detroit, DTW, that we needed to find a captain for, but we did not have any DTW-based reserve captains that were legal to work it. The trip started around noon the next day, and it was currently late evening the day prior, about 18 hours before the trip started. There was a captain on reserve at that moment and for the next 4 days, but he was scheduled for evenings and the trip started outside his reserve window. So I called him and customarily offered him a full day's extra pay to immediately go to bed and come back the following morning for this trip. He flat out refuses my offer, and then proceeds to tell me that I should offer him 200% for the entire trip instead. So basically 4 days of extra pay. I explain that it's against our procedures to offer that much extra pay just to show up early, and even so, we would have to offer that level of compensation to other pilots in seniority order first. He adamantly and rudely proclaims that there is no way he is going to work an illegal assignment unless he gets 200%. I say okay, and hang up. At that point I came up with a brilliant plan. I look up our airline's flight schedule and find out there is a late flight leaving soon to go to Tampa, TPA, and a flight the following morning that operates from TPA back to DTW. So I rebuild the open trip with all the same flights as before, except now it's a 5-day trip that begins with these 2 flights as deadheads. A deadhead is basically a flight that the pilot does not operate. They usually ride with the passengers or in the cockpit jump seat. So he would fly as a passenger to Tampa, stay in a hotel, then fly as a passenger back to DTW just in time to work the flights I had previously asked him to work. The new trip was completely legal per the CBA, and it now started comfortably within the captain's reserve window. So I assign it to him and call him back. He, of course, is not happy about it. He asks me to change it back and agrees that he will now take the extra day of pay, but I decline. The trip is legal now, and I don't need to change it or offer any extra pay for him to work it. I then ice the cake a bit. I humbly and calmly offer to let him deviate off the scheduled deadheads, which normally means the pilot will not take the deadheads and will instead find their own transportation to the city from which their first operating flight departs, which in this case is his home city. I did the math later, and I found that even if he did not deviate, the cost of a non-revenue seat on both flights and paying for a hotel and TPA amounted to less than a full day's pay at his pay rate. There was no additional pay for the longer trip either, since he was getting paid for each of the 5 reserve days now anyway. My MC actually saved the company a little money. 4. Little backstory here, I am a professional mechanic, and have been for a little over 10 years. I specialize in diagnostics and heavy repair at a do-all shop. Basically, we work on all makes and models. Now, being a mechanic, we have seen the spectrum of customers who get mad over something they did, bad parts, and whatnot. But this story, even after 5 years, still makes me chuckle. It was a normal day when this lady drove her Hyundai van in for a diagnostic. Think of an older-looking Karen, nothing unusual about her at first. She comes up and says her check engine light came on, and the car just does not want to move like it used to. No problem, I tell her, as we write up the work order and everything. I get to work while she waits. Upon pulling the van in, I notice it's making a noise, so I shut it down and immediately plugged in my scanner to read the computers in the car for errors. A bunch of error codes pop up. After looking over them, I see they all lead in the direction of timing issues. The car sees different positions for mechanical parts in the engine. My thought is, oh, timing belt jumped, easy. Timing belt is a very critical part of some engines. It keeps the crankshaft and camshafts in perfect alignment. So I open the hood and go to pull the covers to expose the belt and check the condition. I had to take a few steps and let out a very audible "holy shit" with part of the cover off. I found half the belt missing, most likely disintegrated from age, and the other is literally about to break completely. I see a few strands left holding this belt together. It's a miracle it ran even to get into my bay. Just an FYI, this particular engine is designed with tight tolerances, such as if the timing is too far off, it basically destroys the engine. The valves slam into the pistons, broken metal, banging. Bad things that cost a lot of money. We look it over and see the vehicle is 30k past the recommended change for a timing belt. It's amazing this thing runs. We inform the customer and bring her out to the shop and show her what we found. We try to explain it in as layman terms as possible while still respecting her. Some old ladies know their shit on cars, it's crazy. She sees it, and from my story appears to understand completely. I inform her it's a miracle it even drove in. I highly recommend she not drive it or even start the engine until after the belt has been replaced. We go up front, and I go over a timing belt replacement package, with her cost of labor and parts. She flat out goes,
"No, I don't trust you people."
We get that a lot. I try to answer any questions she might have, but no, she's not having any of it. I let her know we will price match any in town, and that I have already marked it down way below normal price to try and help her out. But again, no, she wants her car back. I suggest she tow it to where she wants, and she flips on me.
"I drove my car in, I am going to drive it out."
Okay. I immediately have her sign a waiver that she understands what can happen and we are not liable. By this point, we have reassembled the covers and pushed the van out to the parking lot. I again try to reason with her that it's a bad idea to run this engine. The belt replacement is only a few $100s versus $5k for a replacement engine.
"No, I'm driving it."
She almost refused to pay for her diagnostic fee. Until I told her I can hold the car indefinitely without payment. This whole time I'm trying to be nice, but by now she's been screaming at me and my co-workers for 30 minutes, saying I'm holding her vehicle hostage and that I'm trying to sell her parts she knows she does not need. And as for the MC, I handed her the keys, which she basically ripped from my hands and stormed out. We all kinda gathered to see if it would even start. We heard the engine crank, fire up, then BAM! Followed by a stall. We couldn't believe it. She attempted to start it again, this time just the engine free spinning with no compensation. The belt broke, and the engine had been damaged. Oh great, here goes the next hour of my life, though I'm trying hard not to laugh. She opened her car door with enough force that I'm surprised it did not break. She starts screaming at me, telling me I sabotaged her and I have to fix it. We informed her of her choices, and that only made her turn a shade of red I did not think possible. She kind of went into a scream and squeal yell thing that I can't explain. I only made out a few words like lawyer, sue, cops, as well as every expletive in the book. She told me if we did not fix it, she would call the police, corporate managers, Yelp. The whole thing. We just said we warned her beforehand, but she did not listen. The fault was hers, and hers only. She starts screaming in the parking lot, and we just went back inside, laughing with a few of our other customers who were waiting. They heard it all. About 10 minutes later, our local police shows up demanding to know what happened and how we destroyed her car. I go over it with them, away from her. We show them our photo evidence attached to the work order and the written release of liability she signed. They agreed with us. Watching them walk back to her and seeing the grin slowly turn to disbelief was priceless. The van sat in our lot for almost a month while she tried to get our management and corp to pay for it. They all denied it. We got a few calls from lawyers who we presented our evidence to, who also said she had nothing. I think the best part of this entire ordeal is when she finally came to have it towed. We informed her she owed us a lot in storage fees. At $15 a day after the 7th day of work completed. The diagnostic she paid was the completed work. Cue Velociraptor screeches. Now I want to make a point. Mechanics get a bad name. 1 out of every 100 shops might screw people over, it's true. I try my damnedest to prevent that. Even giving work away if the situation calls for it. But there was no helping this person. Hell, had she been nice and informed me of money issues or something, I probably would have done the job for damn near nothing to help out. A lot of mechanics don't want to screw you out of money. We just want to make sure your huge investment stays in good shape. 5. This happened today while I was at work. I work at a gas station that has a pretty good pizza place in it. And tonight I was working pretty much alone, getting hammered with orders coming in non-stop. About halfway through my rush, an online order comes through, and almost immediately the phone rings. I drop what I'm doing and go answer expecting another order, but it was just a customer, let's call her Karen, wanting to confirm that her online order had came through. I asked the name and confirmed the order with the Karen. It was 1 large all-meat pizza, and I very specifically remember confirming this because she said that was correct, and she would be using a coupon for it. I didn't really think anything of it and went back to work making the pies. Jump ahead about an hour, toward the end of the rush, and the phone rings. I again prepare to take another order, but instead am greeted by an angry customer saying that I messed up their pizza. I apologize and asked for the name so that I could look up the order, and she says Karen. It has not been that long, and I remember the name saying absent-mindedly, "Oh yeah, I remember the order. You called to confirm, and I remember we agreed the order was correct."
Well, the order I put in was for the all-meat, but I wanted it with only double pepperoni on one half and only cheese on the other half.
Okay, let me just pull up the record and we can get this sorted out for you.
The only way to sort it out is for you to make me what I ordered.
By this time I had the order slip pulled up on the screen and could clearly see that there were no special instructions, but was not really looking forward to telling that to Karen, so I politely ask if she would mind holding while I talk with my manager to solve the issue, and she agrees. I head over to the manager's office and explain the situation to her. She is a very easygoing person, and I love working for her because she will almost always just tell us to use our best judgment. The pizza here is super overpriced, and the profit margin for a single pie is somewhere around 400%. She said to just make whatever she wants, and I agreed. Back on the phone, I tell Karen that I would be happy to make the correct order for her, and ask her exactly what she wanted.
I want a large hand-tossed crust with only double pepperoni on one half and only cheese on the other half.
I repeated exactly what she said and was told yes, it was correct. I tell Karen to give me 15 minutes and she could pick up her pizza. Here is where the MC comes into play. I make exactly what she ordered. I rolled out the large crust, tossed it out to a large size, put it in a pan, added a layer of pepperoni on one half, and put cheese over the other half. I'm sure most of you know how a pizza is prepared, and can tell that there was a step skipped in there. You know, pizza sauce. Karen did not ask for sauce on the pizza, and I made sure that I let my manager know I made exactly what she ordered to help cover my backside when she called in to complain. When Karen came in to pick up her pizza, I had my manager take it out to her and ask her if her order was correct, reading from the slip. Large hand-tossed crust with only double pepperoni on one half and only cheese on the other half. Karen smiled and said yes, then took her pie and left. Jumped to the end of my shift, and my manager let me know that Karen had called in to demand a refund for her pizza because it had no sauce and was dry. Manager refused because she went over the order with Karen before she left with the pizza, and told her she got exactly what she ordered. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, number 35. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Okay, first things first. Funny how that works, isn't it? I'd like to give a shout out to the author of the last story there, the pizza story. They have a podcast called The Liberal Bastard. I don't have a link to it, they didn't provide a link, but if you pop that in a search engine, I'm sure it'll pop up and be available wherever all good podcasts live. Okay, also, second thing third? Yeah, let's change it up. Let's have the second thing third. Those of you who are typing furiously in the comments right now, I did not pronounce Hyundai incorrectly. I pronounced it like a Brit, which is how we say it in this country. That's how all the ads have it. Now, I'm aware that some folks like to say Hyundai or Hyundai. I've heard a few Hyundais, but the actual pronunciation is probably closer to Hyundai. So now that we know we're all wrong, let's just move on with our lives and never speak of it again. Agreed? I assume you're all nodding your heads in agreement. Okay. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.